There we go. I've already screwed up everybody. Welcome to All Things Fantasy Grounds, episode 100. And before we jump in at all, I would like to give our disclaimer, which is that All Things Fantasy Grounds talk shows are meant to teach and help, but the opinions stated by those of us on the show are not those of Smiteworks USA LLC or Fantasy Grounds, except tonight our special guest is the president of Smiteworks, and so if he says something, you can be sure that's the opinion of the company.
My opinions are not representative of what's my.
Before we welcome Doug officially, let me say hello to my co-host, which above me here is Furied Fate, refusing to come on camera. This is Leroon in the center. We can't figure out why he has to be the big one on there. And then up in the upper left is Lady Shell. She doesn't have a camera. And how are all of you guys doing?
We're good, and I refuse because, like I said earlier to you guys, now I'm going to tell the stream, I don't look my best right now. In fact, I'm probably wearing the same shirt I wore 2 weeks ago when I was on camera, so this isn't going to be the cute look, okay? Sorry.
All right, and so let's introduce Doug. For those of you that don't know, and I can't imagine, but if there is anybody, or on YouTube later, who doesn't know who Doug Davison is, he is the president and the co-owner of Smiteworks, which is the makers of Fantasy Grounds. We're happy to have him on our 100th episode. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. I also forgot to wear my makeup today and didn't get a chance to shave. So, apologies, but, I figured you guys are used to looking at Rob, so I can't really do much worse, right, Rob?
That's right. You can't do much worse. And I'm going to make you the focus now so that no one has to look at me, because that's a horrible thing. Well, we're so happy that you were able to come, and I know for those people that don't know that I haven't told this story to, I cornered Doug literally in a Holiday Inn room in August in Florida and made him say that he would come on the 100th episode when it came around like 5 months earlier, and he agreed to it, so it's very nice. And we've had John on before, but I guess I'm going to give you a chance to, before we have anybody ask you any questions or anything, if there's anything you'd like to say, a general statement, things about Fantasy Grounds, things about the company, anything you'd want people to know about how things are going or how things have been going, anything like that at all.
No, I mean, in general, I think things are going really well for Fantasy Grounds and for Smiteworks. We're continuing to grow. Obviously, the big burning question is always, when is Fantasy Grounds Unity going to be out and publicly available? That's the number one thing that kind of gets asked. And we did a little bit of a survey in, I guess, late November. And we'll kind of continue to go back and check on that to see how the beta testers actually felt like it was, how ready it was for official release. And we really want that to be representative. Fantasy Grounds Unity is not just a company product, it's a community effort to bring it forward and to bring it out to the global general audience. So we really want to do our community proud as well. So our beta testers, we want them to feel like when it does get out there that it will represent what they've been telling people that they hoped it would represent, all along, and that sort of thing. And so we don't want to sell them short or sell Smiteworks short. And we still stand behind existing version of Fantasy Grounds as well. And so, we think that's, with a few exceptions, it's still, very, very good platform for people to game on. But we do want to move to Fantasy Grounds Unity. We just want it to be an overall positive experience for everyone that does fire it up when that happens. So we did move it back to Q1 2020. We haven't locked in an official date yet, but hopefully it's moving more and more in that direction. So I'm still very positive about it despite the delays. But it's something that is there. People are using it and doing more and more with it. And we hope to see that continue to grow. And then it'll be something we can look back on and say, yeah, it was painful getting to that point, but we've made it there, and we did it with everyone's support. And hopefully, we can meet everyone's expectations of the software.
Yeah, as far as I know, everybody that I talk to all the time about it is still pretty excited about it. And I've got about 650 people in my Discord, and we talk about it. I know Leroon has 5,700 members at FGC now. Is that right? 5,800, and people are talking about. So everybody's pretty excited. One of the questions that somebody had posted in the chat a few minutes ago, way before we started the show, that I'm just now remembering, and forgive me, I don't know, chat, who that was. Their question was, did you consider the Kickstarter to be good or fantastic or beyond your wildest expectations, or how did you feel about how the Kickstarter went?
I feel like it was very solid. 8,500 backers was very good. It didn't feel like it was like crazy swing one way or the other. So we definitely, when we go to launch, we were hoping that it didn't, just peter out a little bit and limp across the finish line. Obviously, we had some expectations that we wanted to set the bar low, for a couple of reasons. In Kickstarter, it's, you're also raising awareness of the platform for people who have never heard of the thing before. And so how you do that, a lot of it is marketing. I mean, and a lot of Kickstarter's whole thing is really just ultimately marketing more than anything else. We didn't, a lot of people bring stuff to Kickstarter because they need the funds to pay for the development work. And in our situation, it was a little bit different. We were subsidizing, we have been subsidizing for the last 4 years, the development of Fantasy Grounds Unity with the sales of Fantasy Grounds Classic, essentially. And we were going to, continue doing that for a while, and we'd be fine. And we could continue to do that, for a while forward, because Fantasy Grounds is still, a very solid, well-performing application, and we're able to sustain the company with it, basically. Right. So really, we viewed Kickstarter as a big marketing opportunity more than anything else, because we wanted to raise awareness of it to people who had never heard of it before. We also did want to provide some mechanism for people to get in and help get involved with the process, with the beta testing. And it felt like a good kind of fit for that process as well, to help us shape how it finally ended up. And so it was really more than the fundraising aspect that mattered the most to us. And then we were pleasantly surprised. It obviously did very good, like 500,000 or something like that, which was very nice. And we were able to better support a lot of the partners that we worked with as a result too, because a lot of it were like add-ons and stuff like that people could get. So it was very similar in a lot of ways to on a larger scale, but similar to things like our winter sale on Steam and our summer sale and stuff like that. Those kinds of things are also ways that we can reach out. So it was another big event, and it's an event that you only get really one opportunity at and one shot. So it's an injection of cash and interest and awareness and everything kind of all rolled up into one kind of massive, moment.
Yeah, and I think I back a lot of Kickstarters just because I have a huge problem. But it always fascinates me that probably the biggest thing for most companies is that marketing, is that awareness, and the how it allows you to reach a whole new audience and things like that. So I thought that was wonderful, and 8,500 people plus now you have a pool of beta testers. Yeah, so it's pretty good. Before we and guys, if you have questions in the chat, just type them in and we'll try to get them. But any of the people hosting the show with me, did you have questions that you wanted to pose to Doug before we go to the audience?
I actually have a question about, once Unity is officially launched, how long are you keep around Classic? Are you going to kind of slowly phase it out after a couple of years?
So that's a good question, and it's one that, again, we're going to kind of go back to the audience on. We don't really see any reason to ever remove it, first off. So, but it will start to get fewer and fewer kind of updates. It's going to go into more of a maintenance mode as far as the engine capabilities. We probably won't be adding any new significant engine enhancements to it, but it will continue to get updates in the form of rule set updates, extensions, modules, those sorts of things. And we plan on having all of our rule sets and modules and extensions maintain compatibility with it for some time ahead in the future. And we're going to have to kind of judge that as things go. If it looks like, say, 80-90% of our audience has at some point moved over to FGU, and there's something that they're really begging for that would require us to then say, okay, well, we could do this, but it'll only be an FGU and not an FG Classic. But so there's going to be some point in time, I don't know when that will be, but there will be some point in time when we'll start having to ask ourselves those questions. and basically ask the audience, okay, do you want us to come out with this new version of this module that only has those cool new features in FGU, or do you want us to really, maintain that compatibility with both platforms so that, you can continue to use it in FG Classic? And there's going to be a lot of people that, just from my experience, will hang on to software that works because it works, and they'll continue to use that for a while. We hope over time that Fantasy Grounds Unity will do everything that Fantasy Grounds Classic can do, but just better, and that people won't really have any reason to want to hang on to, FG Classic. But that's going to take a while to transition off, and I don't know yet if that's 1 year, 2 years, 3, 4. I mean, it could be a while. So that's a good question, and it's just kind of an unknown, really. But a lot of it's going to ultimately come down to what the user base is. I mean, right now, 8,500 users is a lot of people, but it's a tiny fraction. It's like 4% of our audience. Yeah. So, so right now, FG Classic is a huge, a huge thing for us to continue to support right now.
Right. Anybody else before we go to the chat? I'll take your silence as a no. Diablo Bob asked Doug, can you tell the story of how you sent Rob Toohey to the hospital?
Well, I think still that the hospital was ultimately a pity play by Rob. I don't fully believe that it was due to any sort of medical need. Despite what he will tell you and doctors' actual written notes explaining such thing, because he tried to use that as his excused absence to my game that I was running. But I cut him a little bit of slack. I gave him a little extra inspiration when he came back, and ultimately, I think that was the root cause. He just wanted to get inspiration.
Yeah, I spent $12,000 to go to the hospital for 6 days to get inspiration. Yeah, that's right. So there you go. That's that story. Let's see. Somebody else had a question. Lensman asks, a few months ago, there was rumors that White Wolf was allowing the release of Vampire the Masquerade rule set for FG. Can you confirm or deny and give updates?
Yes, it has been in development for some time, and it's been developed. It is pretty much fully developed, and it's been going a little bit back and forth between White Wolf and our developers who are working on that. The developers who are working on it is Dan Alfaro and Colin Richardson, and it looks beautiful. There's a little bit of I guess some tweaks and stuff that the brand management folks have asked for, and some kind of back and forth there. So we were really hoping to get it approved prior to launching the winter sale in Steam, and that didn't happen. And then there was some final feedback that kind of came back that needed to be looked at.
Thanks for the cheer bits.
One of our devs, Dan Alfaro, was going to be out until like the second week of January before he could look at it. They make pretty quick work of it, so they should be able to get back. Once they get back and look at it, they should be able to turn around the latest request of changes pretty quickly. And then hopefully we'd be looking at maybe late January, February to hopefully get it approved by then. I think it also, by the time that they really do approve it, I think there's a little bit of a scheduling for release that they want to work with us on too, so that they can start preparing the announcements and the news releases and all that kind of stuff. So it's not quite as the same as it is for some of our smaller third-party publishers, where once they approve it, like 10 minutes later we hit publish. So while we could technically do that, I think they're a little bit more formal, and they're very similar to like Wizards of the Coast and Paizo. A little bit of behind the scenes on the like Wizards of the Coast and Paizo. We had some of that stuff. We had license agreements in place. We had software kind of done, reviewed, everything else, and then we had to kind of sit on it for a while, and it was really frustrating from our end, because we were sitting back, we're like, oh, we just want to tell people, like, people would ask questions about it, and people would get frustrated online because they're like, Fantasy Grounds is never going to get D&D license and blah 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 blah, and I saw I saw people expending a lot of effort trying to build stuff themselves. And I was like, man, I wish I could just tell them that we had the license, we're going to come out, but I couldn't even say anything yet. I didn't have permission. So, it was so frustrating, but kind of funny looking back on it now. And we forget that sometimes now it looks like a finely oiled machine. But But especially for the very first product for a publisher that we license, the very first ones often take a little bit of extra. Everyone wants to make sure that it represents their brand properly, that it represents their product line, all that sort of stuff. And then really once we've got that out and they see the response from the community, and hopefully a positive response from the community, and they see that they're not getting a bunch of like extra customer supported incidents and that sort of thing, then they start building up more and more of a trust with us. And then once we've done a couple of products, then not that they go to a rubber stamp mode, but they start loosening up a little bit of those restrictions, and they know what to expect from us, and it all gets easier from there.
Yeah. And I know I've never played Vampire Masquerade, but it seems hugely popular, so that'll be an exciting get for the company. So for those of you that are in the chat, there's many questions, and I don't think we're gonna have time to just sit here and ask Doug questions for 4 hours. So I'm just gonna kind of cherry pick. If I don't pick your question, don't feel slighted by that. I apologize. Just gonna have to pick out the ones that I think are best for him to answer. Here's one. The most recent one in there that interests me is any new developments with the VR table for FG stuff. He might be talking about Tilt 5.
Yes.
And what's going on with
the augmented reality. So similar to us, I think they were overly optimistic on the release schedule a little bit, and so they're still waiting to get that out to me. They haven't started on any of the dev work yet that I've been notified of. They were kind of targeting around November, and then holidays hit and everything else. So they're on my list to kind of follow up with again. But the idea was that they were going to have their engineers jump in and start, experimenting with it once they got to a certain point within their own process. And so I don't know that they've reached that stage yet.
Okay. We were doing this show a couple months ago during their Kickstarter, and I didn't know any of those people. I just was showing the Kickstarter on screen, and we were talking about it. It seemed pretty cool. I had sent you an email about it at some point, and you told me if you're into that kind of thing, it's kind of cool. And during our show, Jerry and Amy from Tilt 5 came into the chat and were talking with us, and we were asking them questions. Yeah, so they showed up, and so then she agreed to come on the show in the future after the product comes out. But they were, they were really nice with us, and we everybody was shocked that they showed up and were talking with us and stuff. So that was kind of cool.
I really like kind of what Jerry's done so far, in the industry and stuff in general, and she's done a lot of really cool kind of pioneering work that is unique, and that's why I wanted to be a part of it in some capacity.
Yeah, it just seems pretty cool. Marmusman, did Doug check out Rob's huge package over the holidays? Okay, let me explain this. I sold the DMs Guild over the holidays everything I've ever made, like 160 titles. And
that package.
That package, yeah, that's what we're talking about. The only way Doug would even probably know about that is if he's checking his DMs Guild income statements. Then he would know my name, but otherwise probably didn't even know what was happening.
I thought you were talking about those other photos you sent me, and I have not opened those yet.
No, those are timed for March 1st, and then you open them for a month, and then April 1st you release them as a April Fool's Day for the entire world.
Yeah.
Question: at what point? I haven't even read this question. I'm just going to ask it. At what point, if ever, can we expect UI updates to FGU, graphics and/or functional? Maybe I should have read that. I don't even know that I know what that means.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about just a mass redo of how the UI functions in Fantasy Grounds, probably not going to really see that very much. Fantasy Grounds is a platform that kind of has a specific style that it uses that does evolve over time, and it's evolved. Like the way it looks today is actually dramatically different than the way it looked 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It continues to evolve over time. But it's not like we're going to completely change the way everything works and looks, and now it's going to look like a website or, something like that. So, and everybody, depending on who you talk to, has a different idea. I mean, look at how Google approaches things and how Apple approaches things. They both say that they're the way UI should be done, and they do it differently. So,
right.
It's a very subjective sort of a thing. And so we kind of have a specific sort of style that we have that, it does evolve a bit over time, and we are looking at some alternatives. We sometimes utilize new rule sets as a way to kind of test out a couple like thoughts and ideas on how we might change some things. Most of that, almost all of that stuff is actually controlled by the rule set code. And so almost none of the look of the UI is really has anything to do with whether it's in C++ or C# or whatever. So a lot of it is stuff that we'll see, like the second edition of rule set, for instance, has a completely different UI and approach to the combat tracker. And so a lot of people like that. And so that might be something that we'll adopt something similar in 5e and then roll out to some of the other rule sets. We're doing a lot of work with the character builder. So Hollis, OTG Wraith, is a new hire that we added in, when did I add? October? I think it was October.
Very recent, yeah.
Yeah, in October, and he's been working on a character builder, like a wizard type interface that should look like a lot of common 5e character builders, but would have all of the data that you have in the system. And so it's going to be a more user-friendly approach to building characters and leveling up your characters in between. So that's kind of like a UI, a UI thing that we're going to see rolled out. And that, if that works well and is well received, then we'll probably look at, okay, well, can we built it in such a way that we can then utilize that same functionality in other systems. We have Dominic has been doing stuff with the Starship combat, for instance, in Starfinder. And he also did a little bit of work on the Vampire the Masquerade rule set. And so he's really pretty good at doing like templating and doing some other really cool stuff there. Josh and Jen Page both create graphics and buttons and stuff for us and new skins and themes. And so some of those things can potentially change or shape the UI to present things differently. We can pretty much move a lot of the stuff around all over the place. And we also see, members in the community experimenting with different things. And some of those things sometimes get rolled into the main UI. Some of the stuff that we're looking at doing is improving window management. Again, good to go back to some different attempts on how we're approaching it. Like the second edition rule set that Celestian wrote for us also has the idea of when you open an NPC, it opens up a single window, and every NPC you open, it just changes which one is displayed in that window, unless you hit a different button and then it opens up two of them. So some people really like that. Some people don't like that. So, it's one of those things
that freaked me out when I first, because I was like, I thought, where's my other guy? Because you're not used
Well, yeah, because some people complain that, one of the things in Fantasy Grounds is it's easy to get a lot of windows open at once. Yeah. And then you have windows underneath other windows, and it's hard to find, where the thing is that you're looking for. So, by reusing the same windows and just changing what's displayed in it, it has a different feel to it from a UI perspective. But again, people are very opinionated about whether or not they like that or not.
Right. Yeah. UI is a thing that you can't. It's like when I was a stand-up comedy. You can't please 100% of everybody. You gotta just do the best you can.
Yeah, not every joke is going to be for everybody. So the same thing with UI. So I would say if your question is, are we going to update the UI or come up with a better UI? That question is probably one I'm not ever going to give you a good answer to. But if you say, can you ever make the UI do this specific thing that would make it easier for me or a way that I would like it, then I could probably answer that easier because I know what your idea of what good UI is. I'm familiar with a lot of UI concepts, and I've gone through, I've had, and in college and then training and stuff over the years, and I've developed lots of different UIs myself personally. But I'm not the one writing a lot of the code for all these different rule sets either. So I can talk about specific issues, about things that we may or may not ever see in Fantasy Grounds, and we may or may not see in every rule set. So is that something that we would roll out to Core RPG, or would it only be something that we'd roll out to, rule set A, B, or C?
Right. So
speaking about developers and coders and stuff, Lensman 1986 asked, what do you look for when selecting or approving an applicant for developer access? So say if somebody wanted to code, something specifically for Fantasy Grounds.
Yeah. So I mostly direct people to James, and then James kind of does an introduction with them, ask a couple questions about what their area of interest is, and then kind of teaches them or tells them what our expectations are. So we're pretty open to bringing people on board. I mean, we have like over 100 or so community devs, I think, right now. Most of them are actually producing module content, like libraries and adventures and that sort of stuff, or different type token packs and maps and that sort of thing. But there are some of them who have offered to do rule sets, and so rule sets. The only thing is there's a lot of developers out there in the world, and a lot of developers are very skilled in their day job and everything else. But doing a rule set from scratch takes a lot of persistence, tenacity, and knowledge. So it's not just whether or not you know how to code, or whether or not you know how to like do some graphics and some buttons and that sort of stuff. What we really look for bringing a new person on board for a rule set developer is someone who actually has been in the community a little bit and has actually developed a few things. And for fun, and you have a demonstrated kind of a track record of, hey, look, I built this, I built that, whatever. That's kind of how Dominic, ended up getting hired full time, is because he had done a decent amount of kind of smaller projects in the community, and he showed that he had ambition, and he learned quickly, and he learned how Fantasy Grounds operates. So being able to spit out code for all kinds of, you could write high-end code for hospital systems and stuff, and clearly how to develop a certain style of code, but that doesn't necessarily translate immediately into being able to be a good rule set developer necessarily. Yeah. So
I get this question all the time, like how do I, and my answer to people is a version of what you just said, is to go to the forums, check in with the developer section, and just make yourself a presence, make yourself known, show people what you've, do a few spec modules, let people see them and get advice, and just kind of, and it's like, comedians don't just appear on the Tonight Show. They work and they make themselves known, and they go to the clubs, and everything relates back to comedy to me. But yeah, you got to just kind of do what you do and make yourself a presence and known to people, and eventually you'll just rise up to get in there. So this is probably more of a John question, but maybe you can touch on it a little bit, Doug. Is there any functionality being added to the API that you can talk about? So and I think he's interested. This is Mary Mayhem. I think he's interested in, can we pull things out of Fantasy Grounds to put them on stream, or can we pull things out to add them into a character thing that we might have outside of FG, or stuff like that? That I'm aware of, there isn't any plans to do any API, right?
I mean, there's a little bit. Most of that does kind of go back to John, and a lot of it is the questions come in from people on the forums, especially if they're very active. We had what was I'm forgetting the name of the combat mod extension that somebody had written that I think he ended up
advanced combat. That thing wrecked everything. Yeah.
the advanced combat. So that gentleman became very prolific in a short amount of time at like producing lots of little updates and add-ons, and incorporated other extensions into this kind of massive other extension. And so he was asking for new API things to support his efforts there. And so, we saw him being active on the forums. And so John took that and then said, okay, yeah, sure. So he would make small API changes here and there to kind of help support that. Some other API changes, especially if it's a way to extract out data from modules, is a different beast. And that becomes a question for licensing as well, because we don't want to do anything which potentially upsets the balance of our license,
Right.
Even if it is technically allowed by the letter of the law of a license that we have, almost all of our licenses are renewable upon the desires of our publishers. So we could, in theory, do something that's technically allowed by the license, but if they don't look upon it as a favorable value add to their offerings, or as a competition to them selling books or PDFs, then that would put us in a not good situation for renewal of our license.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw on the news recently on the industry, there's been a couple of licenses that are expiring, and there's been layoffs and stuff as a result of that sort of stuff. So obviously, keeping your licensees and licensors, happy is something that's a pretty good requirement.
Yeah, it's an important part of it. Putting you on the spot a little bit, I guess, with Leroon being here present with us. But Boffrin's question is, what effect do you think Fantasy Grounds College has had on the SmiteWorks Fantasy Grounds community?
Oh, I think it's been great. In fact, I asked Leroon if we could send more people his way, and he always throws his hand up and volunteers and say, "Oh yeah, sure, send them our way." And he's talked with the various folks that he has working with him there, and they're willing to kind of accept more people coming over. So I send people their way a lot, I saw 5,877 members. So that's a lot of people, and it's a huge value add that I see, and I'm glad that Leroon reached out to me early on and kind of told me what he was wanting to do and what he thought he could do, and said, "Hey, I think I can help you, educate the audience a little bit more, because your software is kind of complicated, and it takes a little bit of hand holding to get there. But hey, I've seen that when you actually learn how to use the software fully, it's pretty powerful." And so he kind of took that and ran with it, and I'm glad that I said, yeah, go for it, and I'm glad that he volunteered to do that. So to me, that's an extension of what I fell in love with SmiteWorks to begin with, was the community involvement has always been very, very high.
Yeah.
With SmiteWorks from day one. And so that was one of the major reasons why I was interested I came from the same community too. I was an end user, and then, in 2008, and then ended up, decided to buy the company in 2009. And so, it's the same sort of thing. I saw that, and John was the same thing. John was just in the community making rule sets. He made a kick-ass D20 JPG rule set, and then a 4E rule set, back in that day. So yeah, we see that a lot, and a lot of people that have, become a part of our company were people who were in the community, as well. So
cool. I like this question because I have you actually shared this, I think, during our game that we played, you and me and Dave and those people a couple of years ago when you sent me to the hospital. The question is, Diablo Bob says, any plans to continue or finish the chat parser that does the stats and all that? How many crits there were, how many D20s there were rolled, how many fumbles were there, and that, remember you had that cool thing that you were working on?
Oh yeah.
2 years ago or something. What about that? I know you're a busy guy, but do you have it in your mind that you want to finish that or get that out to people?
I have it in my mind that I want to finish it. I've got a lot of things. So we've got a lot of stuff. We have our own FG workshop as well that we wanted to do too, so that we could put stuff out there in addition to DM's Guild, and we have lots of stuff around campaign management and other sort of stuff that I want to eventually tackle. That I keep thinking that I've done some this was a prototype that I threw together pretty quickly,
right?
To do the stat parser, but I'm running it through an offline stat parser to pull all the data out and upload it to the database, and it would just take a little bit more time to harden it for public internet use. And so anytime you're allowing importing of large data directly into your database, it's different, so it's super easy to throw together a prototype where I can say, hey, yeah, just send me your campaign file. I can look at it and tell that you're not, trying to inject a bunch of, bad code. Almost said something else. Bad code.
Were you going to say shit, Doug? Is that what you were going to say?
Stuff. Some
stuff
into the database.
Yeah. I thought that was really fun when I think you did it for our game, and we were really surprised, oh, Rob's the one doing the most damage. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Well,
and you're the one that I target with the most damage.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you killed me many times. Will Fantasy Grounds Unity have a demo version like Classic does? That's
Yes.
from Azusa. Oh, good. That was an easy answer.
It does. It does. It's already out right now. And in fact, the Kickstarter backers, we've given them permission to use it for, their players in their games right now.
Yeah.
So eventually we'll open it up further to everybody to try out.
Oh, here's an interesting one. This is from Drake. You met Drake in Florida. You know Drake.
Yep.
As a streamer of FG, is or has Smiteworks developed a commercial or trailer that can be played on our streams as an advertisement for Unity?
Oh yeah, that's good. Good question. No, we need to get down like a 30-second ad version.
Yeah.
So
like just a newer version of the one that's on the website now. People could. I never even thought of that. That'd be great. I'm of course not sponsored by Smiteworks. I've been streaming for 4 years. Thank you. I've never asked for it though. That's the thing. We're gonna have this conversation publicly right now. It does. I was typing like, okay. So let's see. Any more questions? When is the new stats graphic coming out, Rob Tui? Oh, leave me alone. I don't even know what he's talking about. The stats graphic.
He's talking about the quarterly thing. Or the
Oh yeah.
That one. Oh yeah, you're talking about how many games played of this, how many games played of that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when does that come out?
Whenever I basically get a little bit of a free time and then do it. It's a little bit of massaging that has to go through with the data because the campaigns are a little bit all over the place. I can see the majority of them which need to be grouped, but there are like different variants of different rule sets that are actually the same one, but there's like a V2 and a V3 version of it, and so sometimes I basically kind of combine those in where I see that they fit. So
Celestian says he wants to see how AD&D Second Edition is doing because he has an interest.
Yeah.
Let's see, how much time have we done? Okay, we're good. Let's give away a prize right now. Doug, for those of you that came late, Doug has agreed to give away a copy of Fantasy Grounds Unity. This will of course not be available to the winner until that comes out, but you'll go on the list or you'll get on the whatever, however it works.
I'll give him a license right away, and we'll send him in. We'll send them the install. So even if you did not back the Kickstarter, you get right in.
Oh my god.
Nice.
Oh my god. Okay. So
that's a good question. If you already have it, we'll have to give you something else cool.
Yeah. Okay, so even if you have Unity, you can enter and he'll give you something else cool. So here's what we're going to do. If you want to enter the drawing, which I'm going to run a 2-minute timer on, you got to enter in the chat, Doug is the man. So ! Doug is the man. And if you look at the stream, you'll see the list start to fill up here. And then after 2 minutes, we'll pick us a winner. And then we'll see, how that goes. Meantime, anybody else, Leroon or Fury or Lady Shell?
I love you, man.
You might have thought up. Matakuri, thanks for the sub. Anything you might have thought up in the last few minutes?
Yeah, I was gonna keep asking Doug about different demographics outside of the show. So I like the fact that he's been open with me about that. We've actually talked about how Europe is going. My next stop is Australia, and then I'm going to come back to the U.S. probably next year. So he's been willing to share indirect data with me, not actual numbers, but just gives me an idea of. So that was really nice. I did want to ask you a personal question about your upbringing as far as gaming goes. Like, how did you start role playing?
Yeah, so I found a red box at a yard sale. I got dragged on one of my mom's many frequent yard sale trips back in the day, and hated it every moment of it. And I saw this. Well, I guess I should back up a little bit before that. We used to go to I think it was like B. Dalton Bookstore or maybe Walden Books or whatever. I don't know if anyone is familiar with those particular bookstores. One of those two was in like the local mall, and they would always have like one of those little spinning things with D&D modules in it with like the cool pictures on the outside. And I really always wanted those, but they were always shrink wrapped, and sometimes they had scantily clad people on it. And my dad would be like, no, that's not for you, And so, but it piqued my interest right there. Just looking at the pictures, it was cool. And I like Lord of the Rings. I had like a Lord of the Rings book and stuff. So to me, it was all kind of in the same vein. And when I saw the red box for sale, it was like 25 cents, I think, at a yard sale. I think someone was like, must have hated their child or something and decided to get rid of all their stuff, I guess. But so I snaked that thing up really pretty quickly, and then just got back and just read through it as much as possible and just started running games for my friends. And I think we spent the whole first session or two. We just thought it was cool that we were like, oh, look, there's all this information on how much it costs to buy all this stuff. So we just were like doing a shopping spree and thinking about all the cool stuff we would do. Like, what will I do with like 50 foot of rope and a 10-foot pole? I don't know, but it's going to be awesome,
Yeah.
And we were thinking about how cool it would be to have like, just a little, like camping equipment and stuff, and how, I'm going to have this many torches, and I'll have a flint and knife. And, that was the stuff that kind of interested me almost as much as like the swords and stuff like that. Was just like all the cool stuff, my person's going to be loaded like with 5 backpacks full of stuff, he's going to be awesome, And,
all right, cool. Let's I so remember. Well, everybody knows my story about when I started, but the first time you play D&D, your mind is just blown. You're like, it's like you said, I don't know why I need rope and backpacks, but we're gonna get all these pitons and we're gonna do cool shit with it. You just don't even know.
Exactly.
Okay, let's draw a winner. Let's see who wins the Unity. It's Zellikar. Haha, nice.
Wow.
So Zell, you know what to do. Contact me and I'll make sure. I think Doug, all Doug needs is your Fantasy Grounds forum name to pull this off. So just PM me in Discord and I'll make sure he gets that, Zell. And congratulations to her. Zellikar is actually one of the... Twitch just implemented this new thing where they give a badge to the first 10 people that followed you on Twitch, and she's one of those people.
So, very cool.
Yeah, so I'm glad that... And cool. She's gone to our in-person events that we did in Denver, and we went up to...
very nice.
To White... what's that called? Whistler, and... We're going to DC in September, and she'll be there for that too. So that's
very cool.
That's good for her to win that. Excellent.
So Zellikar, do you already have an FGU license?
Let's see what she says. Let's see. Well, she answers that question. Dual monitor support is the #1 requested update on your list. Why is this not a focus for Unity, or is this a focus for Unity?
It's not, and it's not because Unity didn't support it when we started development and design and architect. They've kind of, I think that it may be more possible now than it was, when we first started, but for a while it wasn't. So, now it's one of those things that we basically said, okay, here's our plan, what we're going to come out with, and they didn't have any mechanism for popping windows outside of the main app. It's like the old MDI kind of layout that everything fits inside the one window, and then it's windows inside of windows. And then, plus a lot of us still stretch monitors and do stuff like that too. And you can run 2 instances of the software, on the same system as well.
Yeah.
So that's...
So she says that she didn't do the beta, but that she did Kickstart, so she will have the license. Cool. So does that just mean you can give it to her now and she doesn't have it yet? Is that what that means?
It sounds like she should have it. She just hasn't loaded up the beta yet. So we'll have to give her something cool then.
All right. We'll give her something cool.
Something cool and maybe we'll bump her up to the next level or something within the next backer level, maybe something.
Question from Darth Vex. Does... the map weather effects in Unity are my favorite thing. Is it possible for community developers to add effects to that?
I don't think necessarily easily. There might be a way you can set it up to where you can tweak some of the settings. That the FX that we have right now are part of a specific package that's available in Unity, and then we're kind of picking from the package and we're setting some of the parameters for it. So it's not like a universal language that I've seen, at least, to create your own yet. It's just a matter of, I can pick snow and I can pick the density of the snow and the velocity of the drops. So I can do some of those kinds of things. I can change how much mist and fog there is, for instance, or I can maybe change like the Z order on like how close or far away the fog is to the camera, stuff like that. But each one is a little bit different, and I'd have to see if there's a way that we can either allow someone to override some of those settings and like, externally or not. But what we're probably going to do is in the immediate is just basically provide a sample of ones that we've kind of tuned, so that we think, okay, we've tuned them to where they work the way we think they should work, and that's you'll just kind of pick them from the option. There might be other things that we can do that'll be kind of similar to that we might be able to add in at some point in the future.
Okay. Dice pack.
Before we get ready to wrap up, and I ask Doug my final question, do any of you here with me have any final questions or any final words you'd like to say, either to the audience or to Doug, before we end the show?
I just want to say thanks for being transparent and accepting our humble approach on trying to help the community learn. I'm hoping that in the future we can grow some more demographics for you, and also help you with the streaming community once Unity is out in full force. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah,
excellent.
Thank you.
Ladies, does either one of you want to say anything or ask anything?
No, I mean, I just want to say thank you for being here. I know Rob has been hounding you week after week. I mean, he's almost, at that point where he was going to stand in front of your window with a boombox above his head.
Yeah.
I just sent him friendly email reminders of 8 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 week today, just to make sure that he's a busy man. He's got a lot of stuff to do. But yeah, we do appreciate you coming by, Doug. I know I talk to you periodically, but it's nice to have you on a public forum so people can ask questions. And so my final question to you would be, is there anything that you'd like to let people know that you think, A, maybe they don't know about SmiteWorks or Unity, and or coupled with that, any secret tidbit that you can offer, if there is one?
Yeah, it's kind of put me on the spot a little bit there. That's a good question.
That's why I said anything that maybe people should know but don't know, or that isn't.
I got to point the camera right here.
You point
he doesn't know I'm pointing it. I'm on the screen. Yeah.
But not to put you on the spot, but just maybe there's something that's an obvious thing that a lot of people don't know, or anything that you might want to say. It can just be anything you want. It's basically an open forum for you to say things like, "Oh, by the way, everybody, in case you didn't know this."
Oh yeah.
It doesn't have to be a big secret, but if you want to, have a few beers, we'll wait.
Yeah, I have some beers here. So,
yeah, get some beers.
I'm trying to think of it's something cool I can share with you guys without. I'm looking through some of my past notes to see. I will show one little thing.
Oh my God, this is exciting.
Not really. No, that has
just
too much
kidding.
info on it.
Yeah,
it
just
does.
kidding.
It's got some info on it that I probably can't share. Darn it. How about this one? Well, this is just something kind of funny of how I work. So digital, we're very digital, right? So this is how high tech I am when I make my little list of things. I just hold up I just have like a little sheet with little boxes, and I check them off.
iPhone, yeah, I do the same thing, but I do it in my iPhone in the notes thing. Yeah. By the way, screenshot that. Somebody screenshot that, print it because it's got.
I hope I didn't disclose too much here.
He's doxing it.
Yeah, we're doxing that whole thing.
Someone did. Oh, they will be able to go back and see it. So I had to double check. I probably shouldn't have shown that one, but it's
you know what? I lied. That wasn't my final question because I want to know the answer to this. The final question I'll submit from the chat is Linsman is asking: is there a date when we can start streaming Unity games?
So we gave permission to just a few folks to stream,
but earlier. Not games yet, right?
Oh, but not games yet.
Yeah, we've already done that. I did that that day. I was on there that day.
Yeah, so that is probably. So here's a little bit of info I guess I can share with you guys. I don't know how much have you done you've done networking testing with your folks yet?
I haven't. No.
Okay. So some things. For the most part, it works okay. There's a couple kind of spots that are not quite where they need to be yet. And so, and then if anyone's used the like hosting the game in the cloud, you know, to put your name in the list there, and then you can kind of join the game that way. And then if you try to start that and you cancel out, it like leaves it as an orphan for just a little bit, and then you come back in. It's like, oh, you've already got a game running, and so there's a couple little things there. And we were looking at one of the things we're looking at right now is scalability of that kind of setup. And so we started working on a different version of the networking library. It's written in such a way that we can kind of like it's a multi-tiered kind of layout of code. So basically, it's called n-tiered. And so you take out the middle tier, that stays the same, and you swap out the guts behind part of it, and then the calls kind of act the same. So from the main code talking to the network layer, it doesn't really have to change. And then from the network layer to the low level side, you could change it, point it to a different library or a different host or whatever. So we were running our own server, and this was all hosted on one server that we called our facilitator server, and it kind of just facilitated connecting a GM with players. Yeah. And so we're talking about getting another platform to do that. That's we would basically outsource that part of it, but it's a lot more robust. We incur more costs that way, monthly costs that we have to kind of pay and do that. But I think we kind of did some number crunching and looking at our usage on Fantasy Grounds Classic, the number of games launched, concurrent users per day, max concurrent, all that kind of stuff, and then calculating what would our cost be to just have that be hosted by someone who's a much bigger company with lots of servers. Yeah. And so it just provides a lot more redundancy and everything else. So it should be better. So we're looking at swapping that out, but it'll probably take us a couple of weeks to do that swap out of the network library. And so it's probably going to be, we'll start really opening things up after that has been a little bit tested amongst the beta group to see if that works well. And so we probably have another week and a half or so work on that to kind of get that to the point.
Yeah, and I know that you've mentioned, and John's mentioned several times, and I've been attending the meetings, the beta group or the alpha group meetings, and to not the big thing is don't rush it out. So the person's question, when can we start streaming games? It would be very bad if you were streaming games and then this blew up in your face and didn't work. You wouldn't want that to be like publicly available to people because it would just look bad. So we're trying to make sure we get it to where we're relatively sure it's all working just great, and then that would be when we could do it. So that's hopefully people understand that. Yeah. Good. Well, Doug, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. It was fun to talk to you in front of an audience, and this will be on YouTube later, so people can, who didn't have a chance to see it tonight can see it and kind of get caught up with the latest from you and the company. And I hope to have you back again in the future at your leisure. And there's many people in the chat that are saying thank you. So just know that you're a very loved man, even though you have a dark, evil shadow on your face that we talked about before the show.
I do. Yeah, nice dark, evil shadow.
Yeah, but on behalf of my co-hosts, this is going to be a more abrupt end than you guys are used to. But on behalf of my co-hosts and Doug, we thank you and thanks for coming to the show, and good gaming, everyone.